current tenure ends on January the 5th, that is next year. A final 5-year term will keep him at the helm until 2024. You can follow the story on page 10 of The Star this morning. Also getting jiggy there is Deputy William Ruto with the Focus Beyond Imagination, that is the FBI dance group that will represent Kenya at the World Hip Hop Championships in Arizona, USA. So you can see him also doing his thing there, right? And of course also donning some of the uniforms that this particular group is also donning. That is the Focus Beyond Imagination, and that's, they say, is a stuntsman there. You can follow that story also inside The Star this morning. Let's continue and see what we have on the front page of The Standard today. I have my hard copy with me. State moves to put civil servants on contract. State moves to put civil servants on contracts. That is what we have on the front page of The Standard this morning. And average monthly salaries, it says here, also, they've been broken down for you, right? We have 106 and 857 government firms. That is the amount they're going to be getting. 80,835, that is the parastatals. Also 60,951 private sector. Also we have 58,901 counties. That is also what we have inside the page 6 of The Standard as well. Also, teachers behind hard drugs in schools is a report there. Survey by NACADA reveals students in secondary schools in lower eastern, central and upper eastern regions are the most affected. This story is tucked away on page 8 of The Standard today. No airtime, Safaricom to the rescue. That is the reverse call component that has come into, of course, also into the lexicon, or the public lexicon right now. Safaricom customers will now be able to make phone calls even without having airtime after company rolls out a reverse call feature for its customers. You can get all the gritty details also inside The Standard this morning. Let's move on and we'll see what we have on the front page also of the People Daily. And this is what you're waking up to this morning on the front page of the People Daily. Cartel means millions in Public Service Commission job scandal. That is what we have on the front page of the People Daily today. Carlos plot, brazen fraudsters who have caused untold grief to vulnerable youth seeking employment in non-governmental organizations strike at the heart of public service employer using phony email addresses to line up their pockets from vacancy advertisement or advertisement, as some of you will put it. And this story continues on page 4 of the People Daily this morning. Of course, this was a report also given yesterday by the Public Service Commission as well. So all that is tucked away on page 4 of the People Daily this morning. Jubilee Party was tear women MPs apart. Also, that is on the news beat on page 2 of the People Daily today. And inside the People Daily, there is a pull-out magazine called The Fusion. And today they're talking about, of course, a mother's love for her baby. I now love the baby I did not love, or I did not want. That is a story that you can follow on page 25 of the People Daily this morning. Let's buckle down to business a bit and see what the Business Daily is holding for us. This is what you're waking up to this morning on the front page of the Business Daily this morning. End of permanent and pensionable state jobs. That is a splash. Entry-level civil servants are set to feel the heat of radical policy shift that will see the Public Service Commission only hire on 3-year renewable contracts. That is a story that we can follow also on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Also still on the front page of a Business Daily, Swazuri on trial. Former National Land Commission Chairman Mohamed Swazuri at the Milimani Law Courts yesterday during the mention of a case where he is charged alongside others with conspiring to commit corruption. That is a story that you can follow on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. KQ owners face treasury buyout as MPs propose state takeover. Shareholders of Nairobi Securities Exchange listed national carrier Kenya Airways are set for a buyout by the Treasury if Parliament's proposal for nationalization of the airline sails through. In a report released yesterday, we had Parliament has recommended the formation of an umbrella aviation holding company, to run Kenya's aviation sector. The National Assembly's Transport Committee has recommended that the government establishes the holding company with 4 subsidiaries comprising the Kenya Airports Authority, Kenya Airways, and Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. You can follow this story on page 4 of the Business Daily today. Let's see what we have on the ticker. I don't know. Telkom owner Musheru says ICT Secretary Joe Musheru yesterday told a parliamentary team that he is unaware of who is behind the 60% stake of Telkom Kenya that is held by Jamhuri Holdings. This story continues on page 8 of the Business Daily. Remember, of course, this also brings to light that particular merger that will be happening soon of Telkom and Airtel. And if we do not really know the shareholders of this particular company, is it then wise for us to go full steam ahead and have this particular merger? Well, maybe he's not in the loop on this, but you can follow the story on page 8 of the Business Daily as well. 150 megawatts is the capacity of electricity that energy regulator says local sugar millers can produce to cut reliance on expensive national grid. Also, shilling dips to 5-month low. The shilling has slipped to its lowest level against the dollar since the beginning of January, weighed down by higher liquidity in the market on government payments and rising dollar demand from importers. This story continues on page 19 of the Business Daily. NHIF wants 1-year premiums for chronic... I'm trying to actually zoom out so that you can see clearly, but it's hanging a bit here. All right, I'll just try and tinker with it a bit so that we can continue. Those are joys of using gadgets as well. They might just flop on you. Yeah, there we go. NHIF, I should say, wants 1-year premiums for chronic patients. So it says here that chronically ill National Hospital Insurance Fund, NHIF, covered patients are now required to pay upfront annual premium contributions before receiving treatment, in a directive that could see thousands across the country turned away at hospitals, patients visiting health centers for costly procedures such as diagnostic tests, dialysis, chemotherapy and radiotherapy sessions, as well as those undergoing minor and major surgeries, have in recent months been forced to pay upfront premium contributions as a precondition for the national insurer to foot their bills. Now, a number of patients have shared with the Business Daily records of their advanced premium payments without which they had been denied treatment. Surgical packages, dialysis, chemotherapy sessions. Let me try and just remove that. Also, kidney and heart transplants are restricted, and it is something that NHIF is doing to cushion itself. There are people who register for just a few months, and when they get the medical help they need, they stop contributing. NHIF is requesting that people pay in advance just to cushion itself. This story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily, and of course this is going to adversely affect a lot of Kenyans as well, but you can follow the details also inside the Business Daily this morning. Let's cross over now to Tanzania, and we pick up the Citizen for you to see what is actually inside or on the front page of the Citizen and what is happening across the region. It's corrupted here a bit. Let me try again and see if I'll be successful a bit with it. Well, there you go. What about Mwananchi? That has accepted, but the Citizen, it seems that particular soft copy is corrupted. Tarimba aumizwa na ndengue or dengue. I guess this is dengue because I'm just thinking in Swahili right now. Apata msiba wa watoto wawili wataalamu wa ndege ndani ya miezi minne. Right, so I'll leave it for you to decipher that. That is a splash. I don't know if this is Tarimba aumizwa na ndengue, I should say. That is the story that you want to follow inside Mwananchi as well this morning. I doubt if it's the dengue fever that I'm thinking about. Also, majanga, abiria 1200 wanusurika kifo ajali ya treni Dodoma, and you can follow this story on page 5 of Mwananchi this morning. Also, TAKUKURU ya wasaka waliotokomea na waliotokomea na bilioni 46. That is another story that you can follow also inside Mwananchi this morning. Let's go now to Rwanda and see what we have also inside and on the front page of the New Times. Victim, Uganda police told me to seek asylum or go to jail. A Rwandan national, I don't know why that is actually showing me out of memory. A Rwandan national who returned home from Uganda over the weekend after spending a year in prison has said he was asked to choose between declaring himself a refugee and detention. You have his story continuing there. This is Jean Baptiste Niyomusukunzu from Burera district. He said he was intercepted by Ugandan police on June 4th, 2018 on his way back home to Rwanda from a market across the border in Kisoro district where he had traveled the day before. This story continues on page 3 of the New Times. Also, Africa increasingly speaking with one voice. This is what Kagame is saying, and you can see him here with his Senegalese counterpart Macky Sall together with other dignitaries during a session of the European Development Days meeting held in Brussels yesterday. This year's meeting was held under the theme Inequalities, Trends and Challenges in the Context of Globalization. You can follow the story on page 5 of the New Times in Rwanda. Also, Dutch firm to invest $70 million in solar factory in Rwanda. That story continues on page 5 of the New Times in Rwanda. Let's see also what we have this week on the front page of the East African. Quickly, I'll just lift that for you to see also what is there this week. If you've not gotten or grab a hold of the East African this week, this is a splash today. Inward-looking East Africa moves to keep imports out. That is what we have as a splash today. Borrow and spend, but ministers also present expansionary budgets to be financed by heavy borrowing. That story continues on page 4 and 6 of the East African this week. And also what awaits EAC in DR Congo's entry plan. Most East African community members are said to be enthusiastic the membership application. You can follow the story also on page 3 of the East African this week. Also inside, biofuel from Cotton West. The solution is a probing question there. It is cheap, or it is a cheap and environment-friendly option for farmers. That is what also Outlook magazine inside the East African this week is focusing on. Auctions to replace power patches. The move is meant to boost supply-demand balance. You can follow this story on page 31 of the East African this week. I want to take you back also to 1963 and just show you how the Daily Nation looked then. And that is way back in 1963. And this is how it was. Let me just go back there quickly so that I can show you how it looked way back in 1963. Hope it would fail me. The blueprint welcomed. World Bank views are accepted. That is how the Daily Nation looked then, going for 30 cents only. And it says that the World Bank blueprint for Kenya's agricultural and industrial development has been accepted by the government. A white paper which was tabled when the House of Representatives sat yesterday, that was way back in 1963 on Wednesday, welcomed the report. And that is 29 million sterling pounds needed. That was then. Also, South Rhodesia joins breakup talks. That is, the British government announced today that the Northern and Southern Rhodesian governments have agreed to attend a conference in Victoria Falls on June 28th to discuss the dissolution of the Central African Federation. That was in 1963 still. Also, we can see here, Uhuru talks delay. The second meeting between Kenya ministers and Colonial Secretary Duncan Sandys, scheduled for today, was postponed until tomorrow. Also, later, a Colonial Office spokesman said that Mr. Sandys was seeking clarification of certain points from Mr. Malcolm MacDonald, Governor of Kenya. He said this was the reason for the temporary postponement of this morning's meeting. He did not elaborate on what were the points. The Kenya ministers, that is Mr. Tom Mboya, Mr. Joseph Murumbi and Mr. Peter Koinange, are in London to press the British government for a final date for Kenya's independence. The ministers planned originally to return to Nairobi tonight. That was way back in 1963 today. And this is how the Daily Nation looked. Maybe I can pick also a couple of stories just to give you a bit of history if you are a history buff. And this was also on page 3 of the Daily Nation then. Muliro's ticket guaranteed by Odinga. The Supreme Court was told in Nairobi yesterday that when Oginga Odinga flew to London in 1960 as a delegate of the African Elected Members Organization, he could not afford to pay for his own ticket. FRS D'Souza for Mr. Odinga said this is a final submission in a case in which Mr. Odinga and Mr. Masinde Muliro face a suit brought against them by Equatorial Travels Limited. The firm claims that both men owe it over 220 sterling pounds for a ticket issued to Mr. Muliro in 1960. All right, that was way back also in 1963. That is how it looked. And also Baluya can return, says Kalenjin Man. That is two platoons of GSU and tribal police are patrolling the Kaptama area where 100 hearts have been banned over the past few days. Of course, you can see clearly, I should say, because of the ink that was bleeding over there. But that is how the Daily Nation looked then. But currently, of course, you can see the transformation of technology, that you can have a clear, very limpid paper for you to read with all that particular pleasure. That is what we have currently on the front page of the Daily Nation. This is how it looked. I'll be remiss if I don't show you also the editorial cartoons. Right, my memory is failing me. You can see it's going blank on me. But I just want to show you also what we do have as editorial cartoons this morning as well. Let me go back quickly over there. This is what we have inside the Daily Nation today, according to Victor. Right? It's the fault of the handshake. And you can see some of the sycophants as well. I leave it for you to decipher this. This is the handshake currently, you know, the political tone and tenor in the country. This has been aptly captured by Victor inside the Daily Nation this morning. I want to show you also what we have also in the Standard. And this is what Gado has drawn for us as well, inside the Standard as well. This is for your own good. This is for your own good. You can see a pose of goons there, and this is about the cartoonist that the freedom of expression, of course, right now is under threat in the Middle East. This is what Gado has captured for us this morning. And I want to show you also what we have inside the People Daily. This is what Stano has drawn for us. You will have to go for your salaries in persons. And of course, this is all about the ghost workers, dead people who are being paid. There's an audit report revealing this. And this is a stern action taken by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. This is inside the People Daily today. Lastly, I want also to draw from our archives this particular picture. Did I have it, or did I actually save it this morning? There you go. Right, if you may remember them, that is the president of Zaire, Mobutu Sese Seko, being met or being greeted or being, of course, welcomed there by the then president, former president of Kenya, Daniel Arap Moi. And looking on also is Dr. Robert Ouko, who was then the Minister of Foreign Affairs. That is from our archives, courtesy of a print library, given there by Maria Kanini this morning. So a lot of this in our archives, and of course we'll also be showing you, just to give you a snippet of history a bit every morning. That is what we have from the dailies this morning. Make sure you grab a copy of the Daily Nation. This is how it looks. Let me try and put it up again for you to see. It's gone out of memory, but I'll try and rectify that momentarily. That is what we have inside all our dailies this morning. Let me see which one actually can now accept. Even the Business Daily has gone offline a bit. Well, that is now the headline this morning as well. But let's continue with our discussion this morning. This is all about security, and this morning, as I've mentioned, we're turning our focus on combating terrorism and police welfare. And of course, we know the story that happened last week of the 7 APs that were killed by Al-Shabaab militants. And also, some images were spewed over social media. Now, this controversial blogger, that is Robert Alai, was yesterday arrested by a DCI officer on officers a day after he posted gory images of administration police officers killed by an IED planned by suspected Al-Shabaab militia on Saturday on his social media pages. The blogger was on Tuesday interrogated by the Anti-Terrorism Police Unit, that is ATPU, at the Directorate of Criminal Investigations headquarters along Kiambu Road. In tweets, Ali had published pictures of the scene where a police vehicle ran over an explosive device in Wajir on Saturday, killing at least 7 policemen. Now on Monday, police spokesman Charles Owino, through a statement, warned internet users against circulating the images, terming the act unpatriotic and supportive of the actions of Al-Shabaab. The police also said it was not the right way to convey the message to the families of the fallen police officers. The act was also condemned by the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. However, in response, Ali told NCIC, and asked them to deal with the real issue and that he will not be silenced. Ali has since ceded ground on police demands and pulled down the gory pictures. As we mourn our fallen heroes, posting of the pictures online by one blogger is very unfortunate, inhumane, glorifies terror and is tantamount to supporting terrorism. This is indeed the lowest we can go. We condemn this act in the strongest terms possible. This is from Charles Owino, police spokesman. Right now, we want to also just delve deeper on that and a raft of other issues that we'll be discussing this morning as far as police welfare is concerned with our panelists this morning. Allow me to introduce them to you. We have with us Peter Kiama, who is the Executive Director of Independent Medical Legal Unit. Also, we do have with us, this is Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, who is a Conflict and Resolution and National Security of course, commentator and expert. We do have with us as well the CEO of Africa Policy Institute. This is Professor Peter Kagwanja, and we have Charles Owino, who is the police spokesperson. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
All right, of course, we condemned in the harshest, strongest terms of what's really happened over the weekend with the AP as well. And we had that particular statement from Charles Owino. We just ran it by our viewers this morning. These are stories we've been following. But also it brings to light the issue of, the transnational threat of terrorism that is still, as we enjoy, a relatively calm and peace in the country right now. Still, it's a niggling worry that we do not know where the other shoe will be dropping. Of course, in this country, it could be Wajir, it could be elsewhere. We've had that also at the beginning of the year from Dusit as well. We want to train our focus deeply this morning also on how prepared we are as a country. Do we need to reconfigure maybe the counter-terrorism strategy as well? I know that has been tweaked here and there, but how robust is it? Has anyone interrogated this particular counter-terrorism strategy that we have as a country? And also the issue of police and the preparedness and also their welfare as well. Of course, we had a lot of flack being thrown in social media around what really happened in Wajir. People are saying, how could our police be also, all of them, kept in one vehicle? And what happened to the armored vehicles as well, right? Are they just grounded because they are not repaired? Are they out of commission? This is what we want to get to know from also our panelists this morning. And maybe we can begin with you, Charles Owino, on that particular note. Let's just begin with, of course, what you were condemning, these images that were gory and were being shared on social media. We had Robert Ali, who has been, fingered to be the person who was actually, pushing this particular the pictures on social media and was arraigned in court. Tell us more about what really happened in Wajir. Of course, many people are condemning the way also these particular bodies were treated.
First of all, once more I wish to pass on behalf of the Inspector General our sincere condolences to our departed colleagues who passed on last week on Saturday during that terror attack. Our position is that we are in a very difficult situation. You all know that terror is live and it's with us, and that it must be fought on daily basis. We are unfortunate because geographically we found ourselves in a position where we border a country that has not had a stable government for a very long time. And the general issue of terrorism across the globe that is affecting very many other countries. But that should not be an excuse from our side. What happened is that these officers were on their normal patrol along the border. And there are a number of activities. Apart from security activities, there are also other, like for example, on that day, I think the old men, wazés, were meeting in a particular town, and they had to cover the meeting for the purpose of their security. Unfortunately, they ran over an IED. This happens, but I think for quite some time. We had that problem in Lamu. We came up with measures on how to avoid this. And sometimes you find that there are operational lapses depending on the commander on the ground. You may find a commander who is so confident he understands the area. For example, the commander in this particular case was an officer who was a local. And I think what could have caused him much of this problem is the extraordinary confidence maybe he has that he knew the area so well, and therefore it was easy for him to move. Equally, we still have our mine resistance vehicles, a few. They cannot be many. Government may not have opportunity to buy for every unit a mine resistant vehicle. And that is actually the position. I know there are issues which have been raised in regard to the picture which was all over in the social media.
Yes.
Feeling that the officers were mishandled. First of all, it is important to understand that the vehicles we use are pickups. Those Land Cruisers we use are pickups. And they are open pickups. And the reason why they are open pickups is that is why you find we could be able to save a few lives. If you, in an operation situation, if you would have them in a closed pickup, then you would lose all of them. But open pickups are important for us for purposes of operations. And these are areas we don't get an ambulance. And even today, if you get a road accident and unfortunately you pass on, we will always pick you in our Land Cruiser pickups, not ambulances. So I don't think it is an issue that should be exaggerated in the normal sense. We managed to fly the officers who got injured. They are here, they are getting treatment in hospital. We also managed to fly the bodies of the local officers, because the upcountry officers, because the officers from within that local area, there were about 4, they were buried the same day. But the officers from down country, we have preserved them. We flew the bodies here. We preserved them. Unfortunately, since 2015, we've had a universal insurance that ensures that when, unfortunately, we lose officers or they get injured, they are compensated for that.
All right.
So I think so far we are not doing quite badly. The situation is tough, and we are doing very well in Lamu. We are doing very well all the way from Lamu to Bodei up to Mandera. We are trying to put our best to ensure that the country is secure.
So were these police in an armored vehicle?
Not really. You will not always be in an armored vehicle.
But we know this place is also laden with minefields as well. Why weren't they in an armored vehicle?
The position is very clear. This is, I told you that there is confidence that you develop when you are in a particular area that you are familiar with, not knowing that there's risk at any particular time. And we cannot have enough anti-mine vehicles. We cannot have enough MRAPs because these MRAPs, we have them all over. We have them even in cattle rustling infected areas like Samburu. We have them in West Pokot. We have them in Baringo. And honestly, you can't have enough.
But what will be the standard operating procedure? Because if we know, as I've mentioned, that these places are prone to, explosion of minefields or explosion of mines, and of course they have these minefields as well.
Yes.
The standard procedure will be then you actually operate within an armored vehicle, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's not the standard procedure because you see, let's assume you have one.
That will be the idea.
Let's assume you have one armored vehicle, and you have several scenes within a jurisdiction. Do you stop visiting those scenes because you must go in an armored vehicle? It's not practical. It's not practical, Debarl.
Are these armored vehicles serviceable? Are they serviceable right now?
Yes, they are.
Because reports has it on the ground that most of the armored vehicles
I'll
they're out of commission.
I'll do for you a demo so that you visit those areas where we are using armored vehicles. But you should know that we lose officers. Officers are always at risk. We lose officers even here in town. We lose officers in various parts of the country on crime. Police officers are in uniform. They walk in their uniforms, and a number of times you find a crazy criminal just shoots a police officer and kills him. So these are things that we experience. Mm-hmm. Yes. Right. We need to appreciate the effort that government has made. Government has put in a lot of money in buying equipment for police. And we've moved quite well so far as a service. We cannot complain as much. Remember, we are 100,000 police officers plus. We are one of the biggest civil service in this country. And I can tell you, Debarl, the reason why you are happy and comfortable here is because we have officers outside there working and sacrificing for this country. We don't need to appear as if we are inciting officers against government or against administration of the situation. We empathize with the situation. We can only ask the government maybe to sacrifice, to put in more money. Remember, Debarl, that it is not only security. The government is struggling with health services. We are traveling with poverty alleviation. We have issues to do with education. So the little money, and that is why you see everybody is sad when there is corruption, because everybody wants all the money to go to the central basket, so that at least if each and every person should be able to get a little bit of a share that is required, because it is a holistic approach. You cannot say you are going to buy only MRAPs and children don't go to school and people are not treated in hospital.
Right.
It must be done. And that is why in our reorganization agenda, you find that we decided to give police services specific duties. You remember we had APs all over in the villages. Now we are transferring that population of 24,000 to police stations. And we are only restricting APs to 4 units. One of them is Border Patrol. And the Office of the President, the Minister, the Inspector General, and even the President, they are in agreement that we are going to do specific border units with over 200, 400 police officers for the administration police.
Right.
And then try to equip them, provide more equipment that we can use to detect, especially some of these attackers from a distance. And I think we've done well so far. We've put our best.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So of course, this particular incident just opened up or acts really as a segue to our discussion this morning, looking at combating terrorism in this country and police welfare as well. I will open up now this particular, of course, discussion to the panel as well. Maybe just beginning with you, Peter Kiama, because also you've been intimately familiar with the police reforms development along the way, and also foreseeing the implementation of it so far. Maybe you can begin with the incident itself that really happened. Some of the highlights, the hits and misses that we can learn from this particular incident so far. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Debarl. I think the issue of the increasing risks to our servicemen within the National Police Service, I think it's a situation that we have to live with for a long time to come, looking at the security dynamics in the region, and especially with increased organized crime and terrorism. So it is a fact that our officers face ever-increasing threats and risks in their work. In the medical field, they talk about occupational hazards.
Yes.
So the occupational hazards for our police officers have increased with time, especially due to the situation in Somalia. And therefore, the need for us to examine that more closely and ask ourselves, what are the new strategies that would not only safeguard the population, but also safeguard or reduce the risks in terms of risk mitigation for our officers on the ground. We do empathize with the families of the officers who have passed away, but also those who survived the attack. I do recognize the efforts that the government has made in terms of equipping the officers a bit more, including using the purchase of APCs, but also more surveillance using modern equipment. But I do think that if we want to reduce the risks to our officers, we do need to go beyond equipment, and we need to go beyond responses within the National Police Service. We need to embrace responses and also strategies that bring on board our communities. Because when you look at it, the patrols or surveillance needs to involve the civilians on the ground to monitor the movements in their own locations and be able to inform the police. Because there's no way the police will be able to know the situation in every locality in the country without the cooperation of citizens. So even as we continue to equip the officers, we need to embrace a multi-stakeholder approach in surveillance, in patrols, but also in intelligence gathering regarding the emerging dynamics within each of our regions, especially the northeastern region. Yeah.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, Debarl, good morning. First of all, it's unfortunate, and our condolences to the police officers that have lost their lives, their families and their loved ones. We continue to lose police officers in this part of the world, in Wajir, Mandera, and some of those frontline counties where the terrorist threat is still alive. And even though Al-Shabaab has been on its back foot in Somalia, we see that and this is a much more recent observation, that from the far-flung areas in Somalia to all the way to Cabo Delgado in Mozambique, that there are these groups that have been sleeping and have been coming up and have actually caused significant harm, targeting infrastructure, police, civilians, government workers. The issue of the anti-personnel, or rather the APCs, the armored personnel carriers, and the MRAPs. It's crucial that, as the police spokesman is saying, that that an evaluation is done. There is definitely need for more of these MRAPs, the APCs, to be bought and to be given to the particularly those officers that are serving in the front line. I think a few weeks ago we talked about the budget given to the police, to the internal security, to defense, and I know many people were criticizing the amount of budget that is given to the police. And I think in this panel we said, in fact, it may not be enough, given the kind of threats that this country is facing. This is a budding insurgency that is coming up here, and the people that are going to, in the front line are the police officers that are deployed, besides the army, which is, of course, in Somalia and in specific places around the country. And therefore, equipment is key here. If we can lose $65 billion in a dam that has not been constructed, why should we not use this money to buy this equipment and make sure that our police officers are actually taken care of and are adequately kitted, equipped to ensure that they keep this enemy at bay? That's one. The second bit is training, and it appears, based on what the police spokesman is saying, that the officer that was there appeared to have been overconfident about the surrounding, the environment, perhaps because he had been there before. And this calls, of course, for more training, more specialized training to the police officers, to our security personnel. Having said this, Debarl, the threats that emanate from terrorism is ever present, is going to be there. It is in Wajir, it is in New York, it is in London, it is everywhere. What I want to call on is that we need to do more in the areas of, and we seem to have taken a few steps back, in the areas of pushing forth with countering violent extremism. We need to improve, we need to increase our efforts in that. The multi-agency platforms that have been put in place, counter-terrorism efforts, have worked very well. We've had reduced incidences of terrorism in the main cities.
Thank you.
But along the border, I think these are areas that we still need to secure.
And of course, the issue of budget is also what we really want to interrogate. But because we see a lot has been stashed away for the military, especially for the military, the National Intelligence Service as well, a tidy good sum of money that is going to National Intelligence Service as well. But for the police, that is a measly sum, and we wonder why. And we want to explore deeply on this. But before we even go, I just wanted to get also some of the opening remarks also from Peter Kiama in regard to what really happened and the welfare of police in the country so far. Are we doing well? Do we need to pull up our socks?
Oh. Peter Kiama.
Oh, Peter. Of course, you know it's Peter. Your namesake is here as well.
Yeah, we need.
And all of you are PKs.
And we have worked with him, so I don't even know. Well, now let me start by saying that as Kenyans, we should be conscious of the fact that terrorism is not a preserve of Africa. It's not really. It's not even as much a problem in Africa as it is in developed countries, which have all the armaments and every support we would need in technology and so on. They're more advanced, but they are facing, or terrorism are breaking through the lines. And France is a case in point, and you've seen the many attacks that have been going on in that country. America is another, and there is an ocean between what we would call terrorist-generating regions and America, and they are able to go across the Atlantic Ocean and attack. So it's good to put that global context of this, but also to add to the new phenomenon of homegrown terrorism, meaning, for the first time in the 21st century, we're beginning to see terrorists whose identity we can begin to see. For example, Wanjiro, you can begin to see, Ochieng, you can begin to see Musyoka among these groups. And from across the country, we have Somalia, and we have the Somali as a citizen of Somalia, and we have a Somali as a citizen of Kenya. Again, we have that particular problem. That might not necessarily be what you'd call a generic, police problem. It's now go beyond the police officer. And in a sense, you would see the police officers as victims of the complexity of terrorism as a problem. The other thing is, of course, we have talked about the ungoverned spaces in Somalia and other places that even the Somali government itself and the regional states have not managed to tame Al-Shabaab within the country. And AMISOM has not managed to do that.
Yes.
And Kenya is a neighbor to such a country. So there are spillover effects of this, and Kenya has been defined globally as a spillover country in terms of terrorism. It's not a terrorism-generating country or epicenter of terrorism. It's a spillover, and therefore I think in terms of policy, we need to begin to see the convergence between terrorism and nationalism, and that is why there is this move to kind of describe Al-Shabaab as an insurgency rather than a terrorist group. And that definition, both in legal terms and practical terms or policy terms, is very important. Because if you describe it as an insurgency, then you can call in the police. And if you describe it as terrorism, then this is where you need to really up the game. And that has financial implications. So as Kenyans, I think we need to stick with the idea that we are dealing with terrorism so that you can justify as to why every police in the frontier counties, Wajir, Garissa, Mandera, Ramu, and Marsabit, must have special treatment. But that has to come from our laws. And therefore, we should not be worried about what we are dealing with. If we know that we are dealing with terrorism in these areas, then that justifies a heavier budget for police officers operating these areas, not only to protect their lives, but to protect the lives of Kenyans who are living in these areas. Finally, I think the time has come to ask the fundamental question as to whether we need a special police unit, specially trained and intensely trained, possibly like the way we did with the GSU, the General Service Unit, which deals with local insurgency, local problems that go beyond the normal, police duties of wake up and go patrol Mathare, go patrol city center. Has time come to have a special police unit that is designed specifically to deal with terrorism, so that they can also detect? They don't have the kind of confidence that Officer Wino is talking about here, that you don't take things for granted because you are trained to detect situations like those. My suggestion is that time has come, because terrorism seems to be here to stay, because there isn't much we can do about it for now. So we need this, and this requires budget from the government. It requires determination from the government. It requires, so that the police officers and their duties, and those of the KDF and their duties in the border areas are clearly defined. KDF can go to Somalia as part of AMISOM, but this special unit can be deployed in our, not only in our borders, because our borders have our population. We have our Somali population, we have our Bajun population, we have our, Oromo, Boran, Dida population in Marsabit, and they also need protection from a very special and well-trained force.
All right. Okay, maybe, Charles, you can tell us briefly, because when we're talking about modernization of the military, I thought, of course, we have to go in tandem with all facets of security as well, not just military or maybe the NIS also. Police also has to come in and to step up as well, because, of course, you're looking at digitization of your system as well. But Kinley, we'll look at that later. You have mentioned that, I think there was a report that, according to you, at least 15 police officers have committed suicide in 2019 alone, 15 of them. Mm-hmm. What is the underlying problem, and why are we having all this suicide problem? Because also you went full steam ahead to say that first of all, this is a stress related, it's a work related stress that is largely to blame because of this suicide. Situation where officers at times are given very hectic schedules, forcing them to work in strenuous work shifts, running various operations. This is actually contributing to this suicidal attempts that we're having currently.
Before we move to that, I just want to make a small statement on the proposal Peter Kiama brought forward about working with community. We have done fairly well in Northeastern and Lamu to work with communities. And you can even see out of the 7 officers we lost, 4 were locals. And the officers are doing very well in terms of relating to the locals. And that is why the officer that we got last on Tuesday, the one whom we found alive on Tuesday, was secured by the locals and taken to a Manyata. And you remember I congratulated the Manyata. In fact, we are going to visit that Manyata because he was not even a local. He was an officer from down country. And you can see they received him. They got him in the wild, received him, and handed him over to us, the police. And we have tried to work very closely with the locals. And that is why you are finding that the incidents are a bit rare. So we have many officers who are locals, and that is why this officer, I think, had a lot of confidence, because the inspector was a local, and I think he had worked well with the locals. And interestingly, you find that the locals understand one another very easily. They cross over to Somalia, and these other ones come this way, and they have a very good working relation. But as it takes it, you can find that even in Mogadishu, you can find that they are attacking. They had an attempt to attack parliamentarians just the other day. And then the issue of special training, I would want to inform Professor that our special unit, the Border Patrol Unit, which has been formed under the administration police, have started receiving special training locally and abroad. We are going to upscale it to even a higher level. We want officers to reach the standard level of Recce Squad. We want to have quite a large number of specialized young officers to work in these areas. And I believe that that is the next move that the DIG and the IG and the minister are going to ensure that we develop these camps. You remember we used to have police stations of 10 officers along the border, because what they were doing was simply social problems. Somebody has stolen your cow, there's an assault case. But now it has become a battlefront. And that is why now we are pushing and adding the numbers. Like where they were, we used to have just 5 officers in Koforar. But now we have over 70 in that particular place.
Thank you.
So we are putting up our level best. The issue of suicide.
So, I'm sorry to Barton. Can we just take a short break? Then we, of course, we'll continue with that. We want to take a short break right now. When we continue, we shall actually, yes, delve deep on the issue of suicide. Why do we have 19 of them just dying this year? What is contributing to this? Is it the strenuous working, of course, situation that they do have? Or also, is it because of the issue of payment also is adversely affecting them? And alcoholism has been a contributing factor, according to reports as well. But what is really feeding this particular problem, right? We want to get granular with our panelists on the other side of the break with this. So don't go away, please. If you have questions and a contribution as well, we welcome them. You can hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is our Twitter handle. AM Live NTV, our profile name on Facebook, and 20686, our SMS portal. Don't go away. before we took a short break, of course, we had put a question to Charles Owino regarding the spate of police suicide that it has happened recently. Of course, this year we know 15 of them committed suicide, and we're wondering what is the underlying issue. We want to actually get granular with that with our panelists, and I want you also to get to contribute as well. You can hit us on Twitter, AM Live NTV is our Twitter handle, AM Live NTV, our profile name on Facebook, on 20686, our SMS portal. Back to it, the suicidal, of course, cases that we do have. What is instigating this?
Is okay. Thank you so much, Debarl. I want us to look at the issue of suicide in a very holistic manner. First of all, we look at national statistics. You find that the rate at which citizens, Kenyans, are dying through suicide, killing themselves, is quite high. First of all, we have people committing suicide, and two, we have cases of homicide, people killing others, especially families, girlfriends, boyfriends, people killing one another left, right, center. But the issue of suicide is a crisis in the country, not only to the police service. Look at it in a holistic manner and find how many Kenyans have committed suicide this year. That will be able to give you a background to get to know that there must be some underlying problem or pressure somewhere that is pushing people to commit suicide. The only problem is that the mode in which police officers commit suicide, the tool they use, because it's easy to die using a gun. When you put a gun on your head, you will not even notice. Your head will be blown even before you notice. No pain. Compared to when somebody hangs himself, you'll find them struggling and getting a lot of pain as they die. So policemen use the gun. So first of all, it is important to note that the rate of suicide in the country is very high, according to our statistics, police officers included. But on top of it, it's good to understand that police work is purely a sacrifice. As it's in fact, we work more like priests and nuns, because if you look at the quantity of work we do, vis-a-vis maybe what we earn, it tells you that it must be a calling. You don't go to police service to go and get a job. You should go to police service when you are ready to sacrifice. And I think in the past, when some of us left school, and before us, there were several job opportunities. Those who did Bachelor of Education straight away got admitted into the teaching market. Straight away you were posted to a school. Those who did administration, they became DOs and administrators. Nobody was leaving university and failing to get a job. As late as 1982, Nairobi University was still graduating 300, 500 people. Now we have a mushrooming. And when you didn't qualify for university in the first place, even if you had high grades, but the minimum cutoff left you, unless you went to India or to US or to UK, majority just left at that level. Now you find that there are many people who are just looking for jobs. So a person becomes a policeman because he's looking for a job. He's not designed, he's not a person who has the will and the sacrifice. The choice, like some of us made a choice. You check on me from my primary school, I was a scout boy, from secondary school, high school, and so on. And you find that inherently some of us really wanted to be. Even now we have opportunities to get better jobs, but you find we are still sticking to work as policemen. So first of all, we have a large number of people who are joining the police who just came to work. And then when they come in, they find the conditions are so strenuous, they are so disturbed. That is one factor, because there are no jobs. Anybody wants to do a certain job. But also policemen work under very strenuous circumstances. And you may find that out of stress and many other issues, some people decide to take away their lives. But what we have done, we have come up with a counseling system. And you saw the other day when one of our athletes even threatened online that he could take his life. you saw the Inspector General took it upon himself to have him called to his office to talk to him and find out what the problem was. But the team that we have for counseling managed to get him. And sometimes, you know, when an officer gets access to you, I can tell you a very simple example. Our officers go to places like Mandera and so on. He's 24 years old. He has just married. He has left his wife at home in Kiambu or somewhere for a young girl. For 6 months, 8 months, this man has never come back. Then tomorrow you hear this woman has eloped with somebody. So this young man cannot be able to control those kind of pressures. He will end up coming and killing someone or taking his life and so on and so forth. So these are practical scenarios, and that is why we are now putting in money and effort on counseling, and we are sensitizing commanders to ensure that they are very keen to look at the behavior of officers. If somebody starts getting withdrawn, somebody has a complaint, we want, when they come forward with complaints, maybe they want off duties and so on, they should be allowed to go. So we are looking at weaknesses, which areas are putting a lot of pressure on officers. And we want actually to thank government for one thing, coming up with the housing policy. It's quite a problem, but remember, we had officers like officers in GSU who are in operation areas, and they move in companies. Today, this year he's in Lamu, next year he's in Nairobi, the year after next year he's in Isibania, the other year now he's in Mount Elgon. They go around in companies. But these officers live in camps. They cannot live with their wives in those camps. And now with the house allowance that we are giving them, even when they live in camps, they can be able to rent houses for their family somewhere and settle them. And that was not there before. It was said that there was no house allowance. You had a privilege that you were living in those makeshifts and those camps. The only problem now we are facing is, for example, Nairobi, we proposed they are paid a minimum of 18,000. But according to SRC, you cannot be paid more than 50% of your salary. So it will put government in a situation maybe, and that is why we are saying we must fight corruption. And everybody must come up to fight corruption, because we are losing a lot of money through corruption.
Right.
If all this money would go to the bucket, I think the government would have an opportunity to pay us better, equip us. And that is why I call upon every policeman in this country to make sure that they fight corruption at the small level where they are. Yeah, okay. Because even, you know, it's still very sad that you can see a police officer picking money on the road from a motorist. It's quite sad. But if we can fight, what we can say as a country, if we can make a resolve to fight corruption, and all the monies can go to Treasury, I can assure you, we will be able to get more equipment to our officers, we'll be able to pay them better. Because sometimes the pressure that the government has to ensure that we manage we collect enough and manage to run with our budget is quite a big pressure. And also to pay the debts that we have.
Okay.
And that is why
thank you.
We are saying that we are saying that every Kenyan should be able to fight, especially corruption.
Right, thank you.
Yes.
We should look at corruption, but of course that issue of pay as well is, I think, is a niggling worry also to the police officers. And we're wondering, why did the National Police Service Commission protest a court order to pay graduate police constables their salaries, you know, that is equivalent to some of the seniors?
It's a very good...
This is a graduate...
No, it's a very good discussion. Let me just explain it to you now, because I think people are getting it wrong. When we are recruiting... Could we get the views of this? No. Let me explain it, then they can counter what I've said.
So that you can actually...
Because they don't know the situation. When we are recruiting, in the last 4 years, we have been recruiting 10,000 police officers. When we are recruiting 10,000 police officers, we give an opportunity to recruit between 700 to 1,000 graduates, almost 10%. Now, these graduates that we employ you as a constable with a certificate, a degree certificate.
With a degree certificate?
Yes. These graduates, before 1995, some of us going down from the time Mohoro was employed, Kiraide, my group, we were employed, people were employed with degrees, but people were earning 2,600, which was a constable salary. And then after 2 years or 3 years, you are promoted to an inspector and you start earning inspector's salary. In 1995, the Commissioner of Police, then Kiruki, approached OP and the public service that they wanted to come up because they realized graduates were going away. So they wanted to come up with a special program because there was need for graduates to be constables to learn the basic work before they become inspectors. That was the reason why Kilonzo removed the direct entry inspectorate, so that you start as a constable, you start by recording OP, you go for patrol, you see how those officers are behaving, so that tomorrow you are able to manage them knowing exactly what they do. So in 1995, Commissioner Kiruki, who is still alive today and a strong man, wrote to Kimalat, who was our PS, to the public service through Kimalat, and requested that we come up with a graduate program where graduates would enter as constables, but at job group J, which was graduate entry across board. So these officers, from 1995, we were paying them graduate salary. Mm-hmm. Now what happened is that the university started mushrooming. Now officers who are employed with B plane and never joined university, who had B minus, who had C plus, even those who had D plus and C minus were now doing certificates, then they have diplomas, then they get degrees. Mm-hmm. But the challenge is an HR challenge. There's a difference between a graduate constable, meaning a constable employed holding a degree certificate and we recruit him as a graduate, and a constable holding a degree. You could be, it is like you employ somebody in the civil service as a clerk. You know, you can employ a management trainee who comes in with a degree and a specialist in a certain line. Then you can employ a clerk. Then this clerk, tomorrow, he decides to study, he gets his diploma or he gets his degree. But you see, that does not make you promote him to management simply because he has attained a degree. It has put us in a very awkward HR system, in the sense that even when you are managing a group of people, like in a police station, what is the number? What is the establishment of the police? And what is the strength? How many inspectors am I supposed to have? And what is the budget that the Treasury is giving us for inspectors? But now, what happens is, people have gone to the universities which have mushroomed after they have joined the service. Mm-hmm. They have attained degrees. But you see now, that degree is an added advantage. It's the same way you could have been employed as a clerk. It is like in KDF. They employ they employ cadets. And then they also employ others as other ranks. And even if you go to the military, these other ranks have attained degrees. Some have attained PhDs, mm-hmm. but there's a capping. They can never be promoted to that level. So it's important to understand, it is not an issue of psychopaths. It is not us denying.
Okay, let's
also look at it this way. We have an opportunity.
Thank you.
Just a minute.
We'll come to you, Charles.
No. When vacancies arise, then these officers get first priority in promotion. But that is the dilemma that we are finding ourselves in, that we have officers we have employed as graduate constables, and we have officers who have attained degrees after they have been recruited as other ranks without attaining a certificate. And it is a HR challenge. It's not our wish.
Okay, let's hear from also Peter Kiama, because I remember also there was a press release by Kavuludi, the chairman of National Police Service Commission, and I said this press release was dated 19th March 2018. The National Police Service Commission has noted with concern the misrepresentation in the media reports of a board decision dated 7th March 2018 regarding payment of salaries to graduate constables and officers with disabilities and who serve in the National Police Service. The Commission would like to clarify as follows. This is with disability. Payment of special salaries to graduate constables in the National Police Service is legal protected, or legally protected, and provided for in our policy guidelines. For officers to qualify for payment in this category, the officers must present their degree certificates to the Inspector General, the Deputy Inspectors General, and the Director of Criminal Investigations, respectively, for processing and submission to the Commission for consideration and authentication. The officers whose certificate meet the approval of the Commission in accordance with the guidelines are granted special salary equivalent to the entitlement of an inspector of police. So the issue of you joining as holding a degree and you joining as a clerk, and of course along the way you get these particular papers is neither here nor there, because this is a policy guidelines from the Commission. We'll hear from you. Let's just get from our panelists as well the comments.
Thanks, Debarl. I think there has been confusion, as you can see,
yes,
with regard to the treatment of police officers of various ranks, especially graduate police officers or police officers with degree certificates. It is clear, from interactions with the service, that the service for a long time has not been friendly to graduate, police officers or police officers with degrees. That has been a challenge, especially within the middle and higher ranks, because those kind of qualifications become a threat to those who are not graduates. It has been a challenge all the time. That's number one. Number two is that there has been no clear policy around it. And I think that's what the National Police Service Commission has been working on. But I think let's not reduce police welfare to only salaries or promotions. Police welfare is quite large.
But this is a tickling issue right now. Yes, that we need to also address it.
It is, but you see, suicides are not only as a result of underpayment or it's a wide area. It includes not only the resources provided to the management of the National Police Service by the Treasury. As you are aware, up to now, the National Police Service has not had its own budget, its own independent budget. The National Police Service has always had to rely on Harambee House, on the Ministry of Interior. Yet the National Police Service Act clearly states that the Inspector General must be given his own budget to manage. Then we hold him or her to account for the use of the resources. So we do need to see, number one, the National Police Service being given its own independence so that they can exercise their independence in recruitment, in managing that resource they recruit, and in catering for the welfare of the police officers. That is not the case as of now. And I think that the Parliamentary Committee on Finance and National Security as well, those two committees, I think need to demand that happens. Section 116, I think, of the National Police Service Act clearly states that the Inspector General should be given his own or her own vote. Currently, that's not the case. Number two, we also have the challenge of how the rank and file, especially the junior police officers, are managed by their seniors. For many years, there has been a problem in that management of police. We have, for example, many officers who have done excellent work in the field, who are constables, who have stagnated in one position for many years. And I think that is a mistreatment, is a mistreatment of those police officers, because they have dedicated their entire life, and risking their lives for the sake of our security. So I do think the management of the junior officers has to be taken care of. I am appreciative of the fact that the National Police Service has now introduced the counseling department. Now, because of the limited resources that we have in this country, and because of corruption, the National Police Service will not be able to deploy enough counseling professionals within the service in the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. And therefore, there's a need for the National Police Service also to tap into existing expertise on the ground in the various areas across the country. We have religious leaders who are counselors. They need to lean onto those other professionals and maybe subcontract them to fast track. Number three is the whole issue of mandatory debriefing for any officer who comes across a violent situation. Because we have officers accumulating those violent experiences over years, over and over and over, within our streets in the cities, in the villages, but more so in counterterrorism. Yet they are not availed proper debriefing, psychological debriefing, before they are deployed to other situations. So I think that's critical as well, that debriefing becomes compulsory. Not a matter of choice, but becomes compulsory. And we fund that debriefing process as a country, because it is required. even for us, when you, during burials and of relatives and others, when you go to view bodies, you are given an option in the morgues. You are told, if you are brave enough, courageous enough, please come in and view the body before we go for burial. Police officers are not given a chance, an option. they encounter, badly mutilated bodies out there, yet they have no access to these counseling services. They have no access to options. It is a duty, they have to do it. So I do think that we need to deal with police welfare and police suicides as a complex issue that requires, I think, a multifaceted approach to it. Not only by the management of the National Police Service, but also by us as citizens.
Mm-hmm. Right, of course, holistically approach that we want to take, but the component will be the salaries as well that we are really talking about as well. I appreciate you, but let's just streamline, because this also is causing frustrations within the police force as well as it is right now.
On the issue of salaries,
because
I think,
we have the constables who have graduated, they're feeling they are being discriminated against.
On the issue of salaries, let me say this. Every civil servant, when they are appointed, they are given their terms of service. Maybe Bwana Owino could clarify for us whether police officers, when they are recruited, they are given a letter of appointment that clearly states their terms of service and their career progression. Maybe just to clarify, because some of these are internal security matters that we never get access to. Maybe just to clarify.
Right, let's say from Stafford, we'll come to Dr.
As Owino prepares for his answer, this is a much more complicated problem, depression, suicide. In the US, 30,000, close to 30,000 veterans, not serving officers in the Army commit suicide every year because of trauma and many other intervening reasons. And this is a country that has the best care for veterans, everything best that you can think of. There are hospitals only built specifically for veterans, Army soldiers who have served in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and other places. With all that resources, they still commit suicide. Now, and this is where the problem is. This problem might actually get more complicated if we don't address it now. We have our own troops that are coming from Somalia. Are they sufficiently taken care of? We have police that are serving in the front lines. Do we have plans to make sure that the trauma associated with occupational hazard, the working conditions in these frontline places that the police officers are serving when they come back, are they taken care of? And if a police is traumatized, that police will be a danger to the family, to the community, because if that is not treated, you really cannot tell how that trauma is going to pan out. Kenya is a country in itself, a Debarl, and I would like to compare Kenya with other countries. Just the situation that we live in could just be as traumatizing. In some places you'll have, in 10 Kenyans, one is cutting shortcuts, want to commit a crime, is breaking the law, and then you have the police overwhelmed. If you go to any police station, you'll just find multitudes of people reporting crime. I just came back from Japan, where we're organizing for the G20 summit. I went there with my son. My 6-year-old, after 3 days, he asked me, "Baba, I've not seen a police officer in Tokyo. Are there no police officers here?" And that took me aback. Said, yeah, it's true actually. I've not seen a police car. So people here don't commit crime. People obey the laws. And so there is less stress on police officers. 1 in 100,000 Japanese might, throw rubbish in the street. But you come here to Kenya, everybody's trying to cut a shortcut, wanting to get drunk in order to drive and then bribe a police officer. So we need to look at the conditions holistically that our servicemen and women are actually working under, and then determine, really, is this the way we need to go to move forward as a country? When it comes to the police and internal issues, police Owino said, it's a HR challenge, and these are issues perhaps that needs to be addressed internally within the police, within the Ministry of Interior. There are other issues that perhaps the policemen and women themselves will not talk about, and we have to talk about them. When it comes to promotions or giving positions, the highest perhaps, where sometimes tribal considerations are made instead of merit, and decisions are made for political expediency rather than security primary security reasons, and some of these issues actually demoralize police officers, and we need to ask our politicians to keep off from the police service and let us have a police service that is run, that is regulated by the existing institutions that are provided for by the Constitution. And to end this discussion, Debarl, is the issue of how police is budgeted, how they, I understand that the overall budget in the police is still tagged to the Ministry of Interior. Now, when you go to, say, the Metropolitan Police in UK, in US, and many other countries, you'll find that the police have their own budget. They're able to work on their own issues in a very professional manner within the police, and they know what their needs are, and what is allocated to them is actually what they control. They know what to prioritize to go where. And sometimes these are issues that we might need to, or the system might need to look at in order to streamline the operations of police from the top to below.
All right, let's hear from Peter Kagwanja.
Yeah, I agree that the issue of first suicide, the issues of HR in the police, and others are complex issues. But I think we need to use a general principle rather than localizing the issue to the police. A society like ours is structured along certain disciplines. You are a doctor, you swear the oath of a doctor. You are a police officer, you swear the oath of a police officer. I was privileged to accompany the late Minister of Interior, Joseph Nkaissery, who was himself an accomplished trainer of the military. And now he was presiding over the ministry under which the police are trained. And I accompanied him to Kiganjo. And the time we visited was when newspapers were screaming that certain group of police officers in North Rift had basically seen the raiders and ran away, and were shouting and that kind of thing. That's what was in the media that time. In other words, the question was, are they fully trained to bear the challenge of what it takes to be a courageous officer? And it was the argument that time was we are recruiting too many graduates, too many people, emphasizing on certificates rather than what it takes to the police. And I remember the statement of the late minister that the first order issue in training our our uniformed people is to break the man and produce what we want to produce. You break an ordinary person, a graduate or even a postgraduate or a holder of doctorate like myself to become an officer. There are issues of HR ceases to be, because primarily you come to the police because you need to do what the police need to be done. Now, what we are beginning to see are the two forces, that there is the meritocracy where you go and train yourself, and then there is the other one where you are trained by the police force. So we have now them converging at the top and threatening to create one paradox of our times where you have so many chiefs and very few Indians. And the chiefs are not necessarily trained up the rank. So the issue of HR, I can understand what Officer Wino is talking about. That's a HR question. I argue it is not a HR question. It is about the integrity of our police force. Because if you are trained, you train yourself, and you want to fight to be on the top. And there is no guarantee that you have gone up the rank and you have acquired the necessary skills to protect
the
ourselves.
Career path, yes.
You are threatening the bureaucracy. You are threatening the system. And we go back to Nkaissery. You've got to break the man, you break the woman, and create a police officer. A degree
so it's an issue of insecurity within police force.
Yes, a degree does not break a man and create a police officer. And I think this is a dilemma which officers are, and they can be accused of, oh, you are jiras, oh, you don't want people to go up. That's not the point. Going up means that you have become an accomplished police officer. You have become an accomplished soldier in KDF. You have become a good GSU officer. Certificates, even in our own professions. Even in our own professions, we draw distinction between those who are accomplished. I'm talking about the academics.
Yes.
Those the hard, soldiers with dusty boots, and those who simply want to masquerade as academics. We do that. And the police officers also have the right to know who was broken down into an officer and who has now dusty boots and deserve that promotion. It's not a HR question.
It's not a HR question. Before we come to each other, because also the issue of, yes, we have these police officers who, as you say, they've actually trained themselves along the way, and they have the requisite skill on policing, on management, or even law, or even criminal justice, but they still remain maybe manning the gates for the longest time ever. This is a source of frustration. But let's clearly look at this order, because we had this order by Justice Ongwaya, who issued the National Police Service Commission, which I know, and Police Inspector General, that is Hilary Muchamba, to pay all graduates, police constables, salaries equivalent to pay for the inspectors, and as per the prevailing NPSC policy. Directed, of course, this is directed by Ongwaya. The commission came up and said, but a statement from the commission's chairman, that is Eliud Kinuthia, and Inspector General of Police Hilary Muchamba, indicates that paying the 1,777 graduate police similar salaries with those of Inspector of Police will require 928 million shillings annually. So it's not an issue of annually. And the question is, and they argue that the need for graduate officers could only be determined at recruitment.
Yes.
And the question that is being asked is, according to the commission, the IG had discovered procedural salaries upgrades in the service, a payroll based on acquisition of degree certificates by officers without following due process. But now since we have this...
I want you to listen very keenly to me.
I'll come to you.
No, I want you to listen.
If we have the 928 million shillings that is an issue of budget, why haven't we sought maybe the Parliament approval?
I want you to listen. I want you to listen to me very carefully, as the National Police spokesperson and an officer who has risen through ranks and experienced enough. I've told you that up to 1989, we employed direct entry inspectors. You didn't require a degree to be a direct entry inspector. You required a Division 1 or a Division 2 or A Level 2 Principles 1 subsidiary or a degree, but with high aptitude. You do aptitude exams, because somebody may have 2 Ps, 1 subsidiary, but the gentleman with Division 1 beats him in aptitude. After 1989, the Commissioner of Police, then Kilonzo, felt that police work was a social work, and officers needed to interact with the lower level. So he said, everyone shall be employed as a constable, so that you get a feel. You are deployed in the report office, you go for patrol. There are experiences I got when I went for patrol that are very interesting. I may not have time to tell you here. So during this time, up to 1995, all graduates, you entered at the level of a constable and you earned a constable salary. Our salary was 2,600. Including the current Inspector General, Hilary Muchamba, was recruited as a constable. And then after 2 years, went for special inspectorate course before he crossed over to where he came from. Now, in 1995, because the job was not attracting more graduates, in 1995, the Commissioner of Police, then Kiruki, requested the public service through the PS scheme alert to be allowed to recruit what we call graduate constables to enter at a salary of job group J, which is an entry of a graduate into civil service then. Then, after that period, we started getting parallel degree programs, mushrooming of universities, and many people were able now to attain degrees. The police has an establishment and a strength: 1 Inspector General, 2 Deputy Inspector Generals, a DCI 1, and Assistant Inspector Generals of a certain number, commissioners a certain number. Because if you go to Central Police Station, jurisdiction, the sub-county, there is only 1 SSP, the OSPD, 1 deputy. In the station, there is only 1 chief inspector who is an OCS. There are only maybe 2 or 3 inspectors, 1 deputy another one in charge of crime branch, another one in charge of petty crime, meaning establishment and strength. When we were recruiting in the last 4 years, we were recruiting 10,000 officers per year. We put forward and say, we are going to recruit in Ugenya constituency, where I come from. We will recruit 1 graduate and 11 other constables who are non-graduates. So you choose. So when you come in as a graduate, you find that we have 700 to 1,000 graduates. These ones, in terms of rationing, how many corporals, how many sergeants, how many senior sergeants, these 700, we know we can absorb them in 2 years or in 3 years. And that salary is budgeted for. And these are 10,000. So after 3 years or 4 years in service, out of these 10,000, another 1,500 attain degrees. But they were not recruited as graduate constables. Now, once they attain degrees, they are still constables. We have not given them, they have not grown. We have not trained them to give them position of authority. But they are now demanding to be paid at management level simply because they have attained a what? A degree. But government gives us money on our budget that we have how many inspectors. And we tell them, next year we are going to promote how many inspectors. The other year we are going to promote how many chief inspectors. In that kind of sequence. And I gave you a very simple example. If here in Nation, if Debarl, you came with a degree or without a degree, and then you attend masters and then you attend PhD, you cannot wake up and say you want to be the CEO for Nation Media Group. You must wait when there is a vacancy, it will be advertised, and then you get into it. Now what happens is, these people, the letter of appointment and the terms and conditions is, we recruited them as non-graduate, and they would rise through ranks. But a situation arises where some of these officers have very good grades. They have grade B, they had grade B minus, some even had grade B plus and decided to join police. Now, every year we have what we call special inspectorate course. When we have vacancies, within internally, we advertise and we interview people. Now, these officers are absorbed slowly into those positions when vacancies do what? Arise. But the moment we say we want to pay them the inspector salary, you've just seen there 900 and something million, which we have not budgeted for. Then you go and ask for the money from Treasury. You get a supplementary budget, yes. And then next year again, another 3,000 graduates. But the question is, we have strength and we have establishment. If you are employed as a clerk in a ministry and tomorrow you attain a PhD, we don't push you to management. A vacancy must arise. So what we are saying is that there is nobody who is against graduate constables. And let me use even a very bad word. God forbid. At times, in development, you may even put a cap and say, you must have met a minimum university entry. If you go to Ministry of Education, you cannot be employed, you can, even if you don't attain a minimum of a C plane, you cannot be admitted as a primary school teacher. That is the standard for Teacher Service Commission. Even if you train, if you are employed in ECD as a teacher, and then tomorrow you get a degree in primary option after getting certificate and diploma, the Teacher Service Commission cannot admit you as a primary school teacher because you must have attained a minimum of a C plane. If it is just a minute, if it is secondary, just a minute. I'm just giving you, no, just a minute.
On that particular one,
yes.
Has that matter been settled in terms of have the officers been communicated to regarding the gradual absorption as a policy?
Excuse me, I want to tell you one thing. Yeah. They are aware. And you know, I'm talking out of experience. Yeah.
But
and just a minute. And what I'm telling you is practical unless somebody does not want to listen. I've said, even where you work, you will not just promote somebody because he attend a master's or he attend a PhD.
All right.
We are not saying these people should be mistreated. We are saying these officers will be absorbed and be given first priority when vacancies arise. Okay. But we will be going against the law, and that is why they said the procedure of people who admitted some was wrong. We'll be going against the law to pay somebody a salary for an inspector, and we never admitted him as a graduate constable at the time of admission into police.
But there are those maybe who are feeling, or since 2016, that they've not been actually, paid this particular salary. Maybe you can clarify for us.
Debarl, you have a fixed mind, and it will be very difficult to help you.
No, I just wanted to clarify.
Let me
for them that they actually entered, they were recruited since 2016. Some of them, they have not been paid. Is that the case?
Give me an example. You are talking about a rumor. Give me one.
No, we have examples.
No, give me one.
We do have examples.
There is no officer we recruited as a graduate constable at the recruitment point, unless he decided to hide his degree and came in as any other person, and then after that flashes it. He was not budgeted for.
There are many officers.
And let me tell you, Debarl, we have officers whom we have recruited, even class 7, who have performed exemplarily well.
Okay.
Geniuses. We
Right.
had officers from Northeastern, from Samburu.
Thank you. Let's hear from Peter.
I think one of the things, and I'm guilty as charged, is the 2010 Constitution, because it has intruded or interfered very negatively into the professionalism of our security forces. And I think we need to begin pulling back in terms of less activism as far as our security domain is concerned. Okay. Because within the security forces, you are balancing two very complex forces. The first is careerism, just because you want to go up the ranks and be seen, like, have this title and so on. The second is professionalism. And the two are the ones that are now crashing in this debate about who is paid and who is not paid. Because in the police, I think they are medals. This is what security forces, from the time of Hitler, the time of Napoleon, the time of Alexander, they came up with medals, because this is a place where it's not really the salary or the amount of salary you get, but the amount of acknowledge the accolades that you get because of what you have done. So we look at the military forces, for example. We had Dr. Karangi, an accomplished military officer who also is an academic or has that orientation. That did not prevent him from doing what he was doing. Now, when the time to succeed him came, you have General Samson Mwathethe. Mwathethe is a very, very accomplished soldier in his right. Mm-hmm. Degrees or no degrees are not counting here. It is your service to the military. It's not about your accomplishment or in that other careerism. It is about your profession. And I think that's a point we need to put in mind, because because there are so many bodies commenting on the police. We have IPOA, we have the commission, and it is coming from a certain heritage. Because it's that a police, at a certain time, we thought that the police was beginning to become a rogue force. And therefore, and the human rights debate was very pervading. And therefore, we put too many emphasis on the police that we are now having an overkill. That we are basically, now we are talking about HR issues relating to the police. And nobody is here to talk about the professionalism, so that our police officers will be efficient and so on. So I would like us to have a more balanced view mm-hmm. between careerism and professionalism. I think for me, I would go for professionalism. Mm-hmm. And because if I am a graduate of the police force and I think I'm underpaid mm-hmm. and I can exit, why can't I exit and look for a better job elsewhere? Because the police is not paying well.
But what if you have a calling? Like the way Charles is saying, he's so impassioned.
Let me tell you one thing.
Yes.
As we speak today, I think last year we had a special promotion for graduate female officers. We wanted to fill in, and we promoted quite a number. And many of them were not even earning the graduate salary, but they were graduates. They had very good grades in school, and they went in for training as inspectors, almost about 7 groups. As I'm speaking to you now, I have officers who are graduates. Some, I think 2 are from my office, my department, corporate communication.
Were recruited as graduates?
No, they were not recruited as graduates.
Along the way, they actually got the degrees.
They had, one had a biplane, one had a B minus. They went and did their degrees. And then a time came when now we had vacancies for inspectors. And we wanted inspectors who had degrees, who had certain grades. And we offered them an opportunity. When they come back after 7-8 months, they'll be admitted as inspectors and they'll be paid. And that is what even happened.
But we can't say there's a problem with that criteria.
Excuse me, there's no problem.
You've actually recruited them with a B+. They were not graduates by then, isn't it?
Yes.
But along the way now they became graduates.
Yes.
And now they will enjoy, a graduate's pay.
It will not be a graduate's pay. There's nothing like a graduate's pay. Once you are admitted into inspectorate, you are, as an inspector, you are privileged. You know, we rose from constable to inspector by virtue of our education levels. And the moment you become an inspector, whether you have a degree, whether you are what, you simply earn an inspector salary. This salary that the officers are asking is that they are still constables and they want to be admitted to the salary of an inspector,
police. Yes.
By the virtue of being graduates. On the policy of 1995, that I say there's a clear difference between a graduate constable that we have recruited knowing our strength and establishment, that these 700 we can admit in 2 years or 3 years, and persons who have attained degrees in the course of work, who are not getting discriminated in any way. When vacancies arise and we advertise for positions internally, they always get absorbed. And I've told you we have numbers we have absorbed last year.
But it's interesting that the position of the IG and the chair, Eliud Kinuthia, is not what you're saying. It's actually that the problem is the money. Problem is not that the policy
Excuse
of
me,
1995.
you know why he's bringing the issue of the money? He's trying to tell you that these positions, these ranks are not budgeted for. They don't fall within our establishment and strength. And I can tell you, even if they go to SRC today, they'll not be given the money. I can assure you, they'll not be given the money.
Where is the
because
money?
you will be questioned.
Debarl,
It's very convoluted. Where is the money then for this particular...
Inspector Owino has made the point very clearly that even if you pumped that money, if you just go by the criteria of activism that this one need to be given, you are going to disrupt the police force because they have a way of getting people promoted. Even those who attain degrees and they need to be promoted to the inspectorate, you will have to go through certain internal training.
Yes.
And those training appear and they are budgeted for and everything. So there is an order of things that's governing this thing. It's not money. I can, as a private person, feel that in my estate, I have excess money to donate to Kenya. And I decide to donate to the police. Will that be absorbed within their planning?
Practically,
Yeah.
the DCI, those are people who are known, the DCI, the IG, quite a number of officers were employed as constables. They never earned the inspector salary. What happened is, they were, after a year or two, after gaining the experience as constables, they were offered an opportunity to be trained as inspectors. Then they started earning the inspector's salary. And I can also tell you, even in a class where you are 40, 50 graduates, very few make it to the level where we are. Some decide to go to security companies, some decide to become lecturers, some decide to do other things. You find that at the end of the day, munabaki watu wawili, 3 people, 4 people. And also we appreciate it because police becomes also a source of training security people to work in other agencies. So Debarl, what is there is that when you are employed here as a clerk and then tomorrow you attain a degree, you have to wait for an opportunity, a vacancy to arise for you to compete for that position.
And I guess the point here, is really, putting forward is it's sticking to the rules.
Yes.
It's a disciplined organization. And if you make a slight disruption, then you're opening up a can of worms. Then you're opening up not just in the police service, but also in the other sectors of the security. And you're talking of 100,000 in police, in the army, and many other places. And this is the standard world over that even in the United States of America, you know, a 5-star general earns a 5-star general salary, irrespective of whether that 5-star general has a PhD or a master's or no degree at all. It is how that person became a 5-star general because of the rules of promotion within the
I would like
within
to
the armed forces.
interrogate something from this meeting. I want you to talk to military officers and ask them how many other ranks, from the rank of private to warrant officer 1, have masters and PhD. And they can never be admitted to second lieutenant.
Let me give you an example. General Wawero, Brigadier Wawero, now the Director General for KWS, is in my class, PhD class at the University of Nairobi. He's not even at the top, and he's perhaps one of the very few who have attained the doctorate. Because in this disciplined force, it's not the doctorate that you have, it is the way they promote the people. And there are very many people above him. I'm using him just as an example. There are many people above him who may not even have a master's, who are above him. But indeed, the disciplined forces is not your certificate per se. It helps a lot. It helps in decision making. I'm sure he must be called upon to advise here and there and make the
In
forces.
fact, in military,
Let's say from Peter Kema, as we also give our headline thoughts. We'll come to you, Charles. Maybe your headline thoughts, Peter?
No, I think I'm saying that the point has been made, and my colleagues have also, clarified that there is a system in place within a disciplined service, and that has to be respected. Otherwise, you have chaos. Now, I do believe that the major challenge was this policy gap.
Yes.
There was a policy gap, and people took advantage.
Yes.
You see? Yeah, and therefore
So
there's a
that is
crisis.
what is
And
bringing all this chaos.
There's a crisis now. Now that the policy is in place, what we are saying is let each and every officer out of the over 100,000 police officers be given equal opportunity. And that communication is very clear all the time about the opportunities available, and everybody has a chance to compete for it. I think that needs to be in place. So that the policy is now in place, let the Inspector General and his team and the National Police Service Commission, let them implement the policy as it is. If it's been approved now, the terms of service have been approved, let that be now put in place, and I think we'll see less anxiety.
Thank you.
Because of course, you are dealing with 21st century young officers who are ambitious and and have dreams, and they are finding themselves being managed by a completely different cohort of officers at the top.
Thank you.
And that dynamic has to be managed very intelligently, very intelligently.
Thank you.
Because it's not only in the police service, even in other workplaces, managing the current type of employee who can be very productive,
Thank you.
but also can be very challenging. So it's not only the managers in the National Police Service, it's managers across the board
Thank you.
who are facing this particular
Thank
challenge.
you, Peter. Yeah, your headline thoughts, Dr. Mustafa,
Yeah,
briefly.
Debarl, is just to, this is a good thing that, the police internally is sticking to the rules. Let us see also, members of parliament sticking to the rules and shelve some of their venal appetites when it comes to salaries.
Thank you, Dr. Mustafa.
I
Peter
want to
Kigwanja.
congratulate you, Inea, for inviting Owino here. Because normally in these panels we'd be having another expert here and would be bashing the forces and all. So I think for me it is, this is exemplary because I learned more even as an expert. I learned a lot and things are clear to me than they were now than they were before.
Thank you.
And I think it's congratulations to yourself.
Right. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would want to assure all my colleagues of all ranks that the Inspector General is committed to sticking to the rules of the House and ensuring that the welfare of each and every officer is taken into consideration. He's quite new in office. He's, I think, 2 months or so. And from my interaction with him, I want to assure them that we have gotten a social, reasonable, and interactive officer that has open door policy and is listening to us. What I would like to assure the graduate constables is that for those who have degrees, those degrees are an added advantage, and They should try to perform to their level best. We have vacancies. We will promote them in bits and admit them into those levels that they want. But basically what we are looking for,
Thank you.
we are looking for responsive police officers, disciplined police officers, officers who are committed to improving the image of the police. Because what is killing us most is image.
Thank you.
In terms of our responsiveness and other matters. Otherwise,
Thank
they
you,
should be
Charles.
assured that all is well and every person's welfare will be looked into.
Thank you, Charles Owino,
Yes.
police service spokesperson. We really appreciate you coming through this morning. And you're looking dapper in the new uniform. You didn't tell Charles yeah, the new uniform is looking good. I also want to appreciate Professor Peter Kagwanja, who is the CEO of Africa Policy Institute. Thank you for coming through. Dr. Mustafa as well, who is a conflict and resolution and peace and security commentator here on AM Live. Thank you for coming through. The ED, or that is Executive Director of Independent Medical Legal Unit, Peter Kiama, thank you for coming through as well. We really appreciate that cogent discussion, and we hope as well it has been helpful for our police service. We really do appreciate their solitary effort they're putting out there, and of course this is key when it comes to their welfare, because they protect us. We need also to address their issues as well. Thank you so much for your valued company. My name is Debarl.